I think it's about time we started looking at these machines. So let's start with this one on the top, a little Amstrad 386. And this is the Amstrad PC7386SX80. PC7, that's the range of Amstrad computers. 386SX, well, that's the processor in here, and I believe it's clocked at 25 megahertz. The 80, that's the hard drive, 80 megabytes. And according to an article I found in PC Format, April 1993, we should also expect to see 1 megabyte of RAM in here. Just a 3.5-inch floppy drive on the front, a couple of LEDs, presumably for power, hard drive and something. On the back of the machine we've got our PSU, a little volume dial here, presumably for the internal PC speaker, 2 serial, 1 parallel and a VGA. Now there's no sound card as such to see here, but that PC Format article, it suggested that this little thing had an ad-lib sound card. Makes me wonder, do we have ad-lib sound on the motherboard, routed out through the PC speaker? No PS2 here for the keyboard or mouse, and that's because it's hiding on the front. Hiding under here, you can see the 2 PS2 ports, and you can also see the PC speaker down in there. We are missing a foot on the bottom of this case, so we'll need to find a replacement for that. And those feet obviously need to be of sufficient depth so that you can get the cables out of here without it snagging on the bottom of the case. The front of the case has taken a bit of yellowing and it is rather dirty, but that yellowing itself is quite even, so I don't think we're going to do very much about it other than give the case a good clean. But our little Amstrad is not without problems, because if we take it apart, 3 screws on the back, but also 2 underneath. And if you remember back to the Mega Lode Pickup video, when we first opened this machine, there used to be a barrel battery down in there, a little Varta. It had spilled its guts, and unfortunately we have some corrosion to deal with. So we will have to get this motherboard out of there. But just before doing that, you can see that we do have 2 ISA slots here for expansion, presumably our 1 megabyte of RAM. Onboard VGA provided by a WDC chip here. There's some memory for it and room to expand. Couple of ROMs, and then that is the keyboard and mouse controller. I can see a few other WDC branded chips in here, so presumably that is the chipset manufacturer. We can see a socket here for a coprocessor, and presumably our processor itself is hiding down in there. But we've got that battery damage to deal with, so let's continue stripping this thing down. There's our drives out, and this rail here is coming out with them. Just standard IDE drive and our 3.5-inch floppy drive. And there in fact is our processor hiding in there, little AMD 386SX25. And yes, there's our main crystal, 50 megahertz, that would be divided by 2 to give us the CPU clock. I have these various little connector blocks here for the front panel. That one's going to the speaker, and then these 2 are the 2 PS2 ports. And then it's just a lot of screws holding in the motherboard. That ISA riser comes out easily enough. It's just a card in itself. Just pops out like that. Not much to see on it. Just straight through riser, the 2 ISA slots, and a couple of capacitors. Right, I think that's it. Motherboard should come out. And there it is. So the battery damage then. Let's try and get these ribbon cables off for a better look. Oh dear. Not just isolated to this area as I thought. It has spread down onto these two and just down behind it there as well. What about the bottom of the board? Yeah, it has seeped through a wee bit. And some of those traces there do look a bit dodgy to me. Let's see if we can't clean it up with a little bit of distilled white vinegar. And I'm just using a bit of alcohol now to chase off the vinegar. Right, that's cleaned up pretty well. I'll just let the rest of that alcohol evaporate. Then we need to take a closer look at the damage. So I'm just going over this with the fiberglass pen. Just trying to expose the copper there underneath those corroded traces. Just so we can get some idea of how bad this actually is. Certainly, looking at it initially, it's not great. These traces are incredibly fine. In fact, that fiberglass pen is doing nothing here. Let's see if I can scratch some of it away just with the end of a screwdriver. We're starting to expose the copper there, but this might take me a wee while. So let me do this, and then what I'll do is take a couple of high resolution photos of it, and we can have a closer look on the computer. So this might not be just as bad as I initially thought. Having scratched off most of that solder mask, the only trace that looks as if it's broken, to me anyway, is this one here. This thin trace running below the thick one there. And if we take a look at the photo I've taken on the computer, that's that trace there, running from that via there through to here. And to me, it looks as if it's broken at this point. The rest of them though, as you can see here, they don't look that bad. But we are going to double check all of it using the multimeter. And let's just start with that one that I think is broken. So meter is in continuity, and that's from there to there. And yep, nothing. What about the rest of them though? There's possibly another broken one there. So looking at it on the computer again, that was that one. I'm not getting any continuity from there to there. So maybe not just as good as I thought there, but let me check all the rest of these and then we'll come back and take a look at just how bad this actually is. So that is all the patch wires I think we need to run on the top side. Well, so far, because when probing around, I thought I'd also check this floppy header. And on this side of it here, it's this side that carries all the data. The other side is just ground pins. But on this side, there are a few missing continuity. This was quite heavily corroded, so I think we're going to have to take this off. That might be a bit of a nightmare, but we need to fix it. Luckily enough though, on the bottom side of the board, everything tests out fine. You can see there where I've exposed the copper, just at the little vias, and measuring from those across the pins or pads or whatever, everything is fine. You can actually see the corrosion there as well on the bottom side of that floppy connector. So in the very least, that would need to be reflowed. But it needs to come out because there's some things we need to repair. Where's the desoldering station? That's nice and loose now. Let's see if we can get it out. Doesn't want to come up on this side here. There we are. And yes, it is very crusty underneath there, so definitely worthwhile taking that off. And despite this being Friday the 13th, that came off there without doing any damage. Well, without doing any more damage. There definitely are a couple of broken traces here, so let me clean that up and then we'll buzz it out and see where those breaks are. That cleaned up not too bad, and as you see, I've also removed the IDE pin header here just to try and tidy up any corrosion that might have been underneath it. It actually had very little to deal with, but definitely worth removing just to tidy up. And I've also been buzzing around here with the multimeter and I can't find any broken traces, so either it was just a bad solder joint or I was just making a mistake when trying to follow traces. So it's only the damage in this area that we need to deal with. And to do that, I'm just going to use this stuff here, this fine Kynar wire, albeit I'll install it on the underside of the board, and it can just run between the little vias as it needs to. So I'll just do one of these on camera, and we need to run a bit of wire from that point there across to that point there. And I have a little bit, just cut the size here. Which will go in like that. I'm just going to use a bit of blue tack to hold it in place. A little bit of flux. And I was just about to say a little dab of solder, but it's not taking to it. So what I'm going to do instead is I've just cut the wire a wee bit short there because it was quite long. And we'll just pull it down onto the trace where the copper is exposed. And we'll try and flow a bit of solder onto it that way. You'd never know. Just carefully peel our blue tack off. And we can test it just with the multimeter in continuity. What I'm going to do is follow these traces up to their next point. So there, and this point here, and hopefully when I touch we get continuity through there. Yep, we do. Our little bodge wire has fixed it. Well, I've been busy and everything is back on the board now. All our little patch wires are in place, although to be honest with you, maybe half of them are kind of redundant since they're taking signals this sort of direction and down to this area here, which is unpopulated down there. And if you notice, that is for a 15-pin D sub, which would remind you of a game port. So I'm starting to wonder if perhaps our little Amstrad PC7 here is slightly different than the one listed in that Amiga Format magazine. I don't think this one has any sound card, any ad-lib capability, and perhaps there was an option to have it added and that would have been the game port. We have a battery holder in here now with a little diode down in there so that we can just use a non-rechargeable CR2032. I fitted the original IDE header again, and I've just noticed actually that I didn't fit it straight. It's lying off to one side. Oh well, I'll have to fix that later. All the soldering stuff has been put away. But we also have a new floppy header. That's the old one there, which was just a bit too crusty for my liking. So pulled this one here that has a nice shroud on it. Pulled that off a spare board I had, well, a dead board, and stuck it on there. So I think that's us ready to test this thing. But before we do that, I want to quickly test that power supply. Multimeter at the ready, and I've connected up this old hard drive here just for a bit of load. Let's see if this is going to work. Well, the hard drive there has spun up, but let's just check those voltages. So the red here should be +5, and yep, that's pretty good. That white is -5, not bad. Blue is -12, isn't it? Yep. Yellow would be +12. A wee bit low, but that's okay. Another +5. And then the power good signal, it's +5 as well. Happy days. Seems as if our power supply is good. Let's just get that motherboard back in the case and let's see if there's any signs of life. Everything is back together. We're ready to go. I'm feeling confident, but just on the off chance, let's fit the wee ISA postcard. And then at least we can see if there's any postcodes. Monitor on. Here we go. Video signal. And she's counting up her memory. It looks like a total of 2 megabytes. 640k system plus 64 shadow plus 1344 extended. I think that's 2048. Very good. 2 megabytes of memory, not the 1 megabyte. F2 for setup. Automatic configuration, F9. Let's just try that. And that is setting us with 640k of system, 1280k extended and 96k shadow, 0 EMS. Disk drives, listing them as not installed. I'm going to assume that's a 1.44 megabyte drive. 386SX might be a 720k, but let's just assume 1.44. Fixed disk type. There's a wee sticker on the back of the case that tells us that's type 24. I'm assuming it's the original hard drive still. Let's just go with that. F10 to save. Just take a quick look at these other options here. So extended BIOS features. Not a whole lot to see in there. Number lock boot state, auto. Quick boot, no. Keyboard delay, 1/4 of a second. Keyboard rate, what's that? 30 per second? No idea. 30 characters per second, something? Not sure. System information, 386SX processor, no co-processor. There's our BIOS ID and revision, confirming our 2 megabytes of memory. Very good. System security, that's just passwords, we'll not worry about that. Then we've got options to park the fixed disks or format fixed disk. Just going to ignore those for now. I want to see if this thing will actually boot to its fixed disk. Diskette drive A error. The drive did seek there. Wonder is that actually just a 720k drive? Nope. Still getting the error. Possibly a bad floppy drive then. Or maybe I've missed something on the motherboard. Let's just try and resume and see if it will boot off that hard drive. Doesn't look like it. So it seems as if the problem was the floppy drive. That must be dead. I've hooked up this one here, just temporary. And as you can see, the system starts to boot. So our 3 LEDs, that's power, That one there is the hard drive, and this, at a guess, I'm going to say is turbo. But check this out. What is this? This looks pretty awesome. I did try to set the date and time in the BIOS, so we've got the time okay, and we've got the date apart from the year. The maximum year that we can set in the BIOS is 2010, so looks like we're out of luck there, and I've just left it at 1981. But check out this bit of software. This is pretty cool. Now, I haven't had a play with this yet, so let's see what we've got. So that just lets us set the date, and presumably that one lets us set the time. Amstrad support, what does that do? So this just seems as if it's your standard sort of gubbins that everyone just skips past these days. How do you ensure you get the best service for your Amstrad PC? Warranty provision, you know, fill in your registration card, all the usual sort of rubbish that everyone ignores. Nothing overly interesting in there. What about this? About your computer. The glossary of computer terms. This might be interesting. Looks like they really have covered everything here. A bit, short for binary digit. Bits are the basic building block for the binary code used by computers to function and process information. A bit can have a value of 0 or 1. 8 bits make 1 byte. What's a bug? A mistake or flaw, either in hardware or software. This is really cool. And I dare say if I had had something like this on my old PC back in the day, which was a Packard Bell, I would have learnt all of this inside out. But the other thing I want to see is your software. What have we got on this system? Business. Nothing in there. Utilities. Command prompt. Format disk. Different types of disk. 1.44 or 720. Copy a disk. Listed directory. What's the directory of C? What's that going to do? Oh, so that just actually lists the directory in DOS. I seen something there. I seen something there that we're going to need to check out. Games. I don't believe it. I was expecting to see games listed because I seen games listed in the directory. Let's just dump out of that into DOS. Let's look what I seen. Elite. And it looks as if there are quite a few games on here and a copy of Windows. Has to be Elite. And yes, it's in there. This might be interesting. PC speaker or AdLib. 99% sure we don't have any AdLib on here. Let's just confirm that. VGA please. Elite Plus. So yeah, it does seem as if there's no sound. So let's just try that again, but with the PC speaker. And this time, I think we'll try this bottom one here. MCGA 256 color graphics. Let's see if that works. And yes, it does. Looks a lot better, doesn't it? And our little PC speaker is making lots of noise over there. And despite how basic that PC speaker actually sounds, there is something quite charming about it, isn't there? It beeping away there. And I'm almost scared to admit it, but the original Elite is one game that I've never actually played. I did play lots and lots of Frontier Elite 2 on my Amiga, and I do play the odd bit of Elite Dangerous on my main PC, but the original Elite, it was just slightly before my time, to be honest. Well, my time playing computer games. So I think what I'll do here is strip this floppy drive down to try and get it in the case. Or in fact, what I'll maybe do is go and find another spare floppy drive. I do have loads of them, but one with a white bezel, just so it'll replace this and match the existing. And I also want to make a backup copy of that hard drive, because as I say, it's making some rather unfriendly noises. And I want to back up all that software, especially that Amstrad software. Pull the floppy drive out. I was just going to swap it out there for another one, but I noticed it's a Sony drive, and it sort of made me think maybe I should just fit this black floppy drive, because it's a Sony as well, and it matches the hard drive, because something I've never seen before, a Sony hard drive. Now, as I said, it does make rather unpleasant noises, and I am going to do a full backup of it now, but just interesting to see. Never seen a Sony hard drive before. So our little Amstrad PC7386SX80, I think it's turned out pretty well, although to be perfectly honest, I'm not 100% sure about the black button there on the floppy drive. I may yet have a closer look at this drive to see if I can't repair it. Might just be leaky caps, you never know. And to fit that black floppy drive in there, you'll probably notice I had to remove the little dust flap. But that's for another day. The system itself, we have it up and running just as it came to me. I don't think I'm going to bother with any upgrades in this one. Yes, we could put a sound card in there, network card, max out the RAM, but what's the point? I have another 386SX system that is pretty well maxed out like that. In fact, it's that system sitting down in there, that Olivetti. So this one, I think I'm just going to leave it pretty bog basic. And it seems, digging around the hard drive, that our little Amstrad spent most of its life as a gaming machine. There certainly are quite a few games installed on there. I found even more in a directory called games. We have a good list of stuff from ID Software. And this little Amstrad front end, this GUI that sits on top of DOS, I am super impressed with this. And I think what I'm going to do is take the time and set this up properly. And in particular, this part of the software here, which is called Counterpoint. We did have a brief look in here earlier, looking in the utilities. But under games, there was nothing noted. And it is really easy actually to add your own icons and launch your own software from within this. So we can create an icon, and we're going to create an icon for a program. Do we want Counterpoint to stay resident in memory while we launch our program? So this is going to be for a game, so I'm going to click no, because we want as much memory as possible. What are we going to call the icon? Elite. And then enter the DOS commands. So we need to change to the Elite directory. And then run Elite. I think that's right. And that's on the assumption that it's going to start from just the root C directory. Let's give it a go. Seems to be working. P for PC speaker, M for 256 color graphics. Yep, that works really well. And then if we exit the game, hopefully it takes us just straight back into Counterpoint. And it does. excellent. You can actually change this background color, or in fact the color scheme in general. It is a bit hard to see the clock at the minute. I think that looks a lot better. Well, that is it for this video. Thank you very much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed what you've seen, and if you did, I would appreciate a thumbs up. Why not hit subscribe if you haven't done so already? Still plenty more yet to come here on CRG, and I'll see you next time.